Continuing. So yeah, as I said before, this allows individuals to increase their chances at reproductive, foraging, mating success, ultimately increasing their fitnesses. And this is what habitats provide. They allow animals to be able to do this. I say animals will select habitats, and what I mean by this is that they're choosing a habitat or an area within it disproportionately to the resources within the surrounding environment. So they're choosing trees or food or something similar disproportionately to how available that resource is in the surrounding area. A few examples of this are porcupines in eastern Canada that choose mixed forests that consist of coniferous and deciduous trees, but they select areas within these mixed forests that contain aspen trees because these are an important food resource for them. Broad-winged hummingbirds in Colorado in the Rockies, where I'm from, often nest under coniferous branches because the thermal properties are important for them. During the day, they are warmer, and during the night, they are warmer as well. Another example is big brown bats, which are a common affiliated bat that is associated with roosting in cavities and buildings. And they often form maternity colonies in buildings, which are aggregations of reproductive and non-reproductive females and their young. And they select buildings as spaces to form these colonies because they're typically safer and warmer during the day, so their young can develop faster and more quickly. I'm going to bring to light this quote, particularly the first part, which says the only way to save a rhino is to save the environment in which it lives. And this is true for a variety of animals facing a variety of pressures, whether it be habitat loss, whether it be disease spread, climate change, or other pressures. One of the best ways to support these individuals is by supporting habitats in which they reside and by providing resources that are high quality within these habitats. So for bats, there's a number of resources within a habitat that can affect their distribution and their population in the area. The amount of clutter or how easy it is for them to fly, the availability of prey and water, or if you're me, you're interested in the availability of roosts, which can greatly affect the number of bats that are available and present in an area. Bats in North America are associated with roosting in a number of different structures. In the winter and in the summer, you can often find them in rock crevices and in caves and abandoned mine shafts. In the winter, you can find them in these areas because they're typically thermally stable. This is important when they're engaging in a shallow form of hibernation over the winter called torpor. This is where they lower their metabolic rate and rely on food reserves that they stored up during the summer and the fall. And the cool temperatures of the roost that they reside in during this time allow them to enter that form of hibernation deeper without waking up more frequently. But like I said, they're also found in these structures over the summer as well. During the summer, you can also find them in trees and in tree cavities quite frequently. Or if you're a little brown bat or a big brown bat, you'll frequently find them in buildings. This is a structure that both of these species of bats are frequently associated with using. After the Industrial Revolution, when there was a boom of the availability of buildings, these species of bats adapted incredibly well to that availability. This is a picture of reproductive female little brown bats in Cypress Hills roosting in a building. And commonly associated with buildings are also bat boxes, which kind of mimic the qualities that these attics possess. So you can often find little brown and big brown bats in these structures as well. So the big brown bat, the little brown bat, like I said, is what I am interested in researching. And the little brown bat has one of the most widespread ranges of bats in North America. And this is largely, like I said, because of its ability to roost in both natural structures like trees and rock cavities, as well as in buildings. While it has one of the most widespread ranges of any bat in North America, the species is still endangered in Canada. And this is because of a fungus that causes a pathogen that causes white nose syndrome. What this does is it eats away at the skin on bats' wings and their noses, causes them to wake up more frequently during hibernation, and essentially they'll starve to death during this period. It's decimated populations of hibernating little brown bats. And because of this, it can be important to identify both their wintertime roosts and their summertime roosts to be able to support their populations across their physiological lifetime processes. It's important to support their roost selection, not only in the winter when they're engaging in processes like hibernation and combating white nose syndrome, but also in the summer when they're storing up these fat reserves and producing young that are going to be strong enough to be able to fight this fungus as well. So a Google search of papers that look up the roost selection of little brown bats, as I said, more often than not, they're going to be found in buildings. Sometimes we'll see the instance of rocks or tree cavities, but buildings are what they're most frequently associated with. And this makes sense because the majority of studies that focus on little brown bats in the summer focus on reproductive females. They're contributing to the genetic diversity of future populations, they're supporting population numbers. Why wouldn't we focus on supporting their roost selection as well? But as it turns out, it is quite similar across stages. They typically roost in buildings. As I said before, in Cypress Hills, this is again the case. We can see a reproductive little brown bats roosting solely in this maternity colony building and a few other barns in the bat box as well. When non-reproductive females are included in the mix, however, roost selection starts to get a bit more variable. We can see them roosting in natural roosts that include trees as well as buildings within the maternity colony. When males are included in the mix, looking at their roost selection even gets even more variable, with rock crevices, but predominantly tree cavities being the roost type that these individuals are selecting. So reproductive female little brown bats, frequently choosing buildings, non-reproductive individuals, a bit more variety. But why would you study males and non-reproductive females? In ecology, this is often something that you have to justify. Reproductive females, it makes sense. They are contributing to the genetic diversity of future populations. And males also contribute in a similar way, wouldn't be able to reproduce without them. Non-reproductive females, however, is a bit more hard to justify in ecological studies. Reproduction in females can be suppressed due to a number of reasons. It can be due to the high physiological demands that it places on their bodies. They often will allocate more food to their young, especially during lactation, which can be very hard for individuals preparing for the winter. Similarly, if females are too young, they won't be engaging in reproduction as well. Non-reproductive females, however, can contribute a lot to the good and the fitness of maternity colonies as a whole. This is a picture of non-reproductive and reproductive females alike clustering with the naked juvenile bats. And this is an example of kin selection, where non-reproductive females are assisting in the development of associated genetically related individuals, which will in turn indirectly boost their fitness. What this means is that basically the non-reproductive females are assisting in the development of the juvenile bats. It is presumed that they are genetically related, and it is in turn increasing their fitness. And by putting them in the middle of this cluster, the non-reproductive females are allowing them to develop quicker because they're warmer. Other examples of kin selection in colonies of bats can be seen with non-reproductive females actually positioning the baby after it's born to the mom's nipples for easier suckling. So non-reproductive females, as I said, can contribute a lot to the good of maternity colonies and can be a beneficial group of individuals to study as a whole. So in Cypress Hills, there's a known maternity colony of females, reproductive females, and a few barns and an associated bat box. We know they're going to buildings, not really interested in where they're going to go because I know they're returning to this building. Where non-reproductive males and females are going to roost, however, is a bit more unclear, especially with the lack of studies that are on them, which is why I decided to focus on them. So this leads me to my first question, which is what is the natural roost selection of the little brown bat in Cypress Hills as a whole? For this case, I was not focusing on sex. I was just looking at the roost selection of every individual regardless of sex. And I expected them to be roosting in trembling aspen, dead trees, or snags that were shorter and smaller than the surrounding environment. I expected trembling aspen because other species of cavity roosting bat, big brown bats in the area, have been seen using this structure, so they're a known viable structure. And I expected dead trees or snags because this type of structure allows for the presence of cavities, which is what little brown bats typically prefer. Shorter and smaller trees typically indicate a microclimate within a cavity that is cooler. And while reproductive female little brown bats typically prefer warmer roosts because they facilitate their young developing faster, non-reproductive individuals typically want cooler roosts because this will allow them to enter torpor deeper during the summer when food reserves aren't as readily available or when temperatures aren't appropriate for them to be hunting. My next question was if roost selection varies intersexually. So do non-reproductive females and males roost differently in Cypress Hills? And for this question, I separated my data into males and females. I expected that males would be roosting in, again, aspens, but they would be switching between aspen trees. They wouldn't be going to buildings whatsoever, but they would be exhibiting roost switching between different stages of aspen trees. I also expected them to be roosting closer to the maternity colony, further from the maternity colony. And I expected their occupied roosts to be cooler than available roosts because this will mean that they can conserve more energy. For females, I expected them to switch between the maternity colony structures and natural roosts because in this way they can engage in the benefits of both types of structures. The maternity colony, they can assist in kin selection, they can assist in the reproduction and the success of their related females. And in natural roosts, these individuals can be closer to foraging sites, they can be closer to water and areas that might help them conserve energy in the long run. I did not end up taking temperature measurements of female roosts, so I'm unable to confirm if they were indeed cooler, but I did expect them to be roosting closer to the maternity colony to make the process of switching between both the maternity colony buildings and trees much easier. So to answer these questions, the first thing that I had to do was go to Cypress Hills. This is an area in southwestern Saskatchewan that's comprised of multiple different ecozones, wetlands and lakes, grasslands, mixed forests consisting of aspen, spruce, and pine tree, and most importantly, very few buildings. So if little browns are going to go to buildings, they don't have very many options to choose from. Thus, it's expected that they are going to be most frequently going to trees. The next step is to catch bats. So to do this, we either set up nets over a creek that runs through the park, or we set them up outside of the maternity colony. Here's a video of a bat flying into that net so you guys can kind of get a see of how that works. I'll play that again for you. We're very excited about catching that one. And then once that, I'll play just in case. Once that bat is caught, we very carefully extract them from the net. And I affix them with a radio transmitter that allows me to track them to their roosts the following day. The way that this radio transmitter and this tracking process works is extremely similar to how your car radio works. So for your car radio, there's a radio station somewhere nearby that's emitting a signal of a radio station that your receiver within your car is tuned to pick up that specific frequency. So for me, it's 95.7 the party. And then that frequency is amplified by an antenna sitting outside of your car that picks up those waves and carries it to your receiver. For me, my radio station is the transmitter that I glue onto the back of my bat. The receiver is that little black box that I carry that is tuned into the specific frequency of my transmitter. And my antenna is this 3-element antenna connected to my receiver right there. I say track to roost like this is the easiest thing in the world, but it is extremely challenging. This is the hardest hiking I've ever done. I've hiked mountains that are over 4,000 meters tall in Colorado, and Cypress Hills, the bush is extremely unforgiving. You will find cougar caches, probably, bulls, heat stroke. It is challenging hiking. We also tracked them at night, either through nighttime telemetry or exit counts, where you count the number of bats leaving a structure. And this was just to confirm that bats were indeed leaving their structure, because sometimes my transmitters did fall off within the roost. Once I got to an area, once I got to a roost, the next step was to characterize it, either as a building or a tree. And if it was a tree, what species of tree? Pine, aspen, or spruce. And next I took the height of that tree, and I entirely have my parents to thank for this, because I would not have had the tool to measure tree height if it wasn't for them. They came out to Cypress Hills to help me with this and bring me that tool, so I am very appreciative to them. So I took tree height as well, and I also took the diameter of the tree, just using a simple measurement tool. I used this visual depiction guide to categorize if the tree was alive, a snag, or down material. Took the distance of all of my roosts to the maternity colony. And lastly, I climbed my male roost to be able to identify if the occupied roosts that these individuals were roosting in were cooler than their available roosts. So for the tree height, diameter at breast height, and condition, I took all of these measurements for the roost that I found a bat in, and then I found 4 random roosts in the surrounding area, and I took the same measurements. And this was to be able to determine if indeed these bats were engaging in habitat selection, if the occupied roosts were different from the available roosts. And for temperature, I did this only for 1 available roost, and only for males. Climbing trees is a very tedious and difficult process, which is why I decided to only do it for male roosts. It includes shooting a weighted rope into a perfect branch in a tree that can hold your weight. You tie up this very complicated climbing rigging system that allows you to get up and down the tree. And then you get up in the tree. So that's me up there, and we placed temperature sensors in the occupied roost, like I said, and 1 available roost about halfway up the tree in a south-facing branch. I didn't know where these bats were roosting in the tree, so I climbed them once I was able to confirm that bats had officially left. And then once I was able to do that, I just placed it where I best thought the bats were going to be in that area. So I was tagged 30 bats with radio transmitters, and I was able to find the roosts of 19 of them. The reason why I was only able to find 60% of my bats is, like I said, because the bush in Cypress is very unforgiving. I was not able to get to a lot of my roosts. I just couldn't get there. It was too thick, and there were too many trees. Also, this skin glue is a type of glue that I used during my first year. I mentioned before that a lot of my radio transmitters fell off in or within the roost. And I do largely have this glue to blame for that. So I don't recommend it if you guys are engaging in radio telemetry. And also a lot of the bat signals, a lot of the telemetry signals that I attached, I simply wasn't able to find the following day or night. The bats just completely disappeared, and I have no idea where they went. For the individuals I was able to find 24 roost sites of 19 individuals. 5 of my females were roosting in buildings or anthropogenic structures. 4 of them were in the maternity colony. And 1 of them was about half a kilometer away from the maternity colony. She was found by rangers. I actually didn't tag her with a radio transmitter, but they were doing work on this structure. They found her, and I decided to include her in my sample. She wasn't in the maternity colony because 1 bat always has to be different. She decided to roost in this area. I found 2 males that were roosting in anthropogenic structures. 1 of them was roosting solitarily in one of these buildings to my right. And the other one roosting in that upper picture was actually with 14 other individuals, which is very unexpected for males during this period. They typically roost alone. So that was a pretty surprising finding. I found 2 females who were switching between the maternity colony and natural structures like I anticipated. I thought I was gonna find all my females switching between, but at least I found two. One of them switched between the maternity colony and flew off a cliff into the stand of mixed trees. I tried to follow her off that cliff, but I was unable to find the exact tree. So I couldn't determine if it was an aspen or a spruce, but I know that she was in a natural structure. This female, I was able to find her natural structure, thankfully, and it was in a spruce tree. And she, again, was switching between the maternity colony and the spruce tree quite frequently. So I said before, I'm mostly interested in the natural roost selection. We know that they're going to buildings. This was something that was expected. How are they choosing trees and what qualities of the trees are they choosing them for? I was able to find 4 females who were roosting in trees, including my 1 female who was switching between, whose roost I was able to find, and 12 males who were roosting in trees. So males seem to be using natural structures a bit more than females are in this area, who seem to be quite frequently occupying that maternity colony. Unexpectedly, almost all of the roosts that I found all of my individuals in were in spruce trees. We really thought they were going to be in aspen trees. My supervisor even came out to Cypress Hills, the first spruce tree I found, just to make sure I did know how to do radio telemetry. But they are indeed not choosing aspen trees. One male I even found switching in between roost trees. But like I said before, one individual always has to be different. I found this male switching from a spruce to this aspen back to a spruce. So 15 individuals occupying spruce trees and 1 male who decided to switch to an aspen. And I have no idea why. So I expected individuals to be roosting in short, small, dead aspens. And as it turns out, they are mostly selecting spruce trees. Now, I was only able to find the roost sites of 19 individuals, which means that my sample size is unfortunately quite small, which means that most of my findings I can't confirm are entirely due to chance. They are trends, but they're not significant findings, unfortunately. But what I did find is that tree species does seem to have an effect on roosts being occupied by all individuals regardless of sex. Aspen have a decrease in the odds of occupation against spruce trees, and it's more likely that individuals, males and females, will be roosting in spruce rather than aspen in the Cypress Hills. This can be important for forest management practices, and if anyone were able to get a larger sample size and be able to confirm the condition, how old, what stage of decay these trees are in, this could be even more applicable to forest management practices. I was able to find 2 males switching between natural structures. I expected to find all of my males doing so, but unfortunately the struggles with radio telemetry limited this finding. However, it does seem that for males, natural trees over buildings are the most important structure for them in this area. For males, however, it turns out tree height might be the most influential factor deciding what they select for a habitat. For trees, as tree height increases, the odds of a male occupying that site decrease, meaning, like I expected, shorter trees seem to be more important for males, maybe because they're cooler. For females, I also found them switching between the maternity colony and trees. This was like I expected. However, I expected to find 10 out of 10 females switching between these structures, and I only found 2 out of 10. In terms of what kind of tree they're selecting for, I have no idea. I only found 4 roost natural trees of females. Most of them were roosting in the maternity colony. So it seems that this maternity colony is a very important structure for both reproductive and non-reproductive females in this area. And in terms of the type of spruce trees that they're selecting for, I can't really say confidently. It does seem to be trending that females are selecting for taller trees rather than males. Again, I only have 4 females that I found, so I can't say this confidently, but the data is suggesting that unlike males, females are choosing taller spruce trees. You'll remember before that I expected females to be roosting closer to the maternity colony than males to facilitate the energy saving properties of switching between these structures. And what I found is that this is not the case. Again, likely due to my small sample size, catching bats in radiotelemetry is a challenging process. And if I had caught more bats, this might have been significant. However, it wasn't. For males, I measured their temperatures, as you can remember, and I expected their occupied roosts to be cooler than their available roosts. And what I found is that this is the case for 2 of their sites. So it does seem that males are selecting for trees that are shorter and cooler than available trees. And this is again likely because of their properties that these roosts contribute to allow them to conserve energy. So what does this mean? It means that, unlike I expected, aspen trees are not the most important species of tree for little brown bats in this area. And as it turns out, spruce trees are. So for future forest conservation practices, they should be focusing on this kind of tree rather than aspen or pine. The maternity colony for females is an incredibly important structure, both non-reproductive and reproductive alike. Thankfully, the rangers and the people who work in Cypress Hills are very receptive to the presence of a little brown bat maternity colony in these structures, so there isn't any issue with them. However, in the future, these areas should be monitored and protected. And in terms of what kind of trees they're selecting, a lot more research needs to be done in the future. Males similarly seem to be selecting for spruce trees. However, species might not be quite as important considering one male was found in an aspen tree. And they seem to be selecting for cooler trees that are shorter in height, likely because this will allow them to conserve more energy during the summer. I'd like to thank everyone who helped me with this research, all of my donors, and thank you guys again for being here tonight.